Welcome back to Design Discord. I'm Fernando Mastrangelo.
I'm Alyssa Gerasimov, and today we're actually joined by Fernando's wife, Mika,
Hello.
because the three of us we're going to be talking about Design Week, and the three of us spent a whole day walking through the fairs together, and we actually just recorded another podcast episode with Mika, so in a future episode, you'll have a chance to get to know her and everything that her and Fernando do together.
Let's dive into this. Holy crap. Design Week is a freaking blur. It's like when you go, we spent 2 days there, and I feel like I'm still recovering from all the stuff that you do there. What, 4 days?
4
Well,
days.
we spent 4 days.
It felt like 2. It went by so fast, yes.
Was it 4 days?
It was 4 days.
Oh, dang.
Jam-packed.
Oh,
We did a lot
dang.
of studio visits, so that didn't seem as
That's
Design
true.
Weeky,
Yeah,
but yes.
but it's all part of the
Yeah,
Design
and I was
Weeky
there
stuff.
I flew in from LA, and on day like 2.5, I was like, take me home.
I know.
Yeah.
I was like, dang, she's going to be all tired and she's not going to and on like the day that we're there to walk together, it's called fatigue, as the industry likes to call it. Fatigue. I've
You
coined
coined
it.
it.
Now. I coined it. I didn't coin it. No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was somebody else. Anyway, so
ICFF.
you want to start at ICFF?
Yeah, it's the big one.
Yeah, it's the big one. Which kind of sucks that it's the big one because, man, look, ICFF is fine. It's like the big industry one, but really,
International Contemporary Furniture Fair.
that's
If
right,
anyone's not familiar.
at the Jacob Javits Center. But we always beeline right to Wanted because that's where our people are at. That's where the interesting stuff is going on. And it's not that the other stuff is not interesting, but if you go to ICFF, really it's broken down into there are major corporations going there to sell, anything from KitchenAid all the way to larger furniture brands. And then you have the more boutique fair within ICFF, which is called Wanted, which is really one of the only platforms left for the more emerging crowd, the more handmade crowd, less manufactured, and always the most interesting part of the fair. So,
With some people who are trying to maybe even be collectible a little
Yeah.
bit. They're
Well-
like stretching just a little.
Yeah,
You get
they
some
are.
funky stuff in there.
yeah, they're like, I want to show my stuff, but I have nowhere to
Yeah,
go.
and this is the only place I can go for
This is the
that.
only place I can go.
But it was
Um,
interesting to me because it's all for me, Wanted, it's like independent studios or independent
Mhm.
makers. But you did have anything from there were a few ceramicists making more functional, smaller objects all the way through to collectible furniture, which
How
actually
did I know that
didn't.
you were going to bring up
I'm going to
ceramicists?
say.
How did I
You
know
love your
you were going to bring up
ceramicists.
ceramicists right away? It's like, first of all, we
You
I
have a
don't know.
fetish for ceramics.
You have a major fetish for me. And in fact, no, what's happened is that the whole industry has turned into ceramics because ceramicists for decades and decades had not figured out the loophole to actually make a living from the $40 mugs that we've talked about to how can I make a living at this? Oh, let me make it furniture or lighting. Boom! And you make a living all of a sudden. And then, of course, you have these youngins who are championing all this ceramic work. And I think it's just become
By the way, shout out, Eny Lee Parker
To-
was the first to make that.
Actually, exactly
Mm.
right. I wanted to talk.
She was the pioneer
Eny Lee,
of that tree, I will say.
she was. And now it's just unbelievable how much ceramic stuff there is. I don't know how I feel about that, guys. I am seduced by it. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm seduced by it. I like it. I like, oh, look at all this. I am. I'm like, oh, look at these cool lamps.
You
look at
liked those ceramic stools by Jumana.
yeah.
You were drawn to them in some minor way.
There
but-
were a few unique things that the thing I liked about those was that they just seemed like they were trying to be something. They were so experimental that I was like, oh wow, because they felt like these fragile, almost like they're gonna break. By the way, I think she's a RISD girl. Actually, I know she is because I went onto her Instagram. And but I liked them because they felt, they're on that side of like whimsical collectible stuff. I felt like they need to get elevated a little bit, you know? I have to see, I know, that's why. I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, it's early. It's early. Well, maybe you want to talk a little bit about what some of the pieces that you liked, Alyssa? Because, or
That aren't
booths that you,
ceramicists?
or no, in general, the
Oh.
ceramicist. I mean,
Well, I think it's interesting actually maybe like to provide some context. So a booth at Wanted at ICFF, like the sort of standard booth size goes for about I think $4.5 grand. Plus on top of that, if you have electricity or probably the like whatever else
Just
you have to add
lights.
to your booth.
I think they throw in the electricity free of
No, but if you
charge.
want to have like if you
Yeah.
want to have a plug on your wall,
Oh,
you
yeah,
have to
they
pay
charge you for
extra
the
that.
outlet. Yes.
For the
yes,
outlet.
yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That's true. Okay, gotcha.
So I think most people said on average it's like about 5,000 with
Okay.
those kind of added costs. So I just think that that's like a for this podcast an interesting stat to share. My favorite booth. I mean, it's hard for me to say. I think for me it was more of like such a special moment to be able to like walk through like one room and to get to meet all of these people that I've only communicated with over email or just to continue to foster relationships and like show up in person in a way that I don't really get to that often. And, at Wanted, there was a furniture maker named Mary Ratcliffe who I've met once, but she's based in Toronto. There was, actually another lighting studio based in, I think, Quebec that I've emailed back and forth with, but never met anyone from there. And so for me, it more felt like a moment to like connect person to person rather than, I'm not there like shopping for work necessarily.
I know. I was like, how does this girl know everybody already? I was like, what's going on? I was like, how's she so popular? I was feeling a little bit like, she's talking to more people than I am. I think I said that at one point. I was like, what the heck is going on? I was a little jealous.
It's literally
but it's okay.
like the job that I've made for myself is to get to know all these people.
I know. Okay, we could talk about the booths that we like, the work that we like. We could also talk about a little bit about
I mean,
like the
I had
whole
a favorite
structure.
booth.
You had a favorite? All right, jump in.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I like Irvy's booth,
Oh,
INDO
Irby.
made, because I think she has a strong professionalism that stands out amongst the booths. Like a lot of people put, they might have some pedestals or something, but they kind of just put their work up. And she creates a little bit of a vibe. She has a color scheme and the lighting in there to the carpet, to the vignette. It was very cohesive and it elevates it a little bit, makes it a little bit more, well, you might see at a different fair per se.
I mean, yeah, Irvy's always, look, obviously, people that know my history with her, she was on the Ellen's Great Next Designer show, so I've always been a big fan of hers. I think they are doing, they're a studio that I feel is constantly pushing themselves, okay? Pushing themselves not only in their work, but also as a business, right? They're constantly trying to evolve and figure out how to maneuver in this industry. But and then they have these products that they're really starting to push. I think the lamps that they had were also part of their collection from last year, but they're kind of trying to have their iconic evergreen pieces, which I think we talked about in another pod, the evergreen product in the first pod, and slowly introducing other stuff and new language. I think this year the rattan chair adds another layer of language, which I love rattan. Anytime you can seduce me with rattan, I just love that stuff. And then that new console, which I really felt was, they're working with craftsmen in India. And I thought it was super elevated. It looked like something that the Four Seasons would buy. And I'm starting to see how their business and their work is starting to try to open up certain markets. That's what I thought was interesting about this year's booth. So, and I just love their dynamic as a married couple. out there trying to be creative and survive and do what they're doing. So
I think what's interesting is when I came up to their booth, one of the first things I said to them is like, "Oh, you picked green. Like I always associate you
yeah,
with red and blue." And I loved that their response to it was like, "Yeah, we know, which is why we made this choice to like
hmm
expand the way that our brand is like seen and understood." And so it's clear that they're making, very intentional decisions in the way that they're presenting their work.
Hmm.
you know, I would say that the one of the things that I don't love about the presentation at ICFF is that so they're $4,000 booths, but they're so tiny. Okay,
Mhm.
and I often want to see and they make the wall jets out only I think 4 feet. So you always feel
I
like
think
you're
even less than that, maybe I
less,
feel like
maybe
it's
like
yeah.
like 2 feet, 3 feet. And so you always feel like you're looking into a very small vignette of people's work.
Mhm.
And I don't know that that's always the best for presentation, but um, I always like to see more deeper booths, more of the work live. I like to be able to walk around work, like physically experience pieces.
Yeah.
ICFF doesn't really allow you to do that. Um,
Yeah.
that's one of the little logistical things that I think makes the show suffer a bit in terms of wanted.
Mm.
Um,
I did really like actually Design VA's booth, and
yes.
it's I've known their work for quite a while, and it's not like my bias speaking actually, and I know them as people, but I'd never seen their work in person despite having known them for, over a year, like year and a half now.
hmm
And I actually just thought it was great, like, the way that it was set up, it was really simple, but it felt, like, easy to interact with, like, we sat at the chairs and, like, the 2 chairs on the opposite sides of the table, like, I thought it was really easy to digest and really clean.
Yeah, because I think the vignette worked in that case quite a bit. It was like
Yeah.
it was a fun. I will say I was drawn to that work right away. Um, as I've lived with it in my mind, I'm not
Mm.
saying that I don't like it now. What I'm trying to say is that as I've lived with it, um, I wonder the impact of it has kind of settled a little bit for
Mm.
me, and I think it's because of the playfulness of it. So it's trying to do two things. It's like it's playful but high end, right?
Mm.
So you got the little stool with with the little feet, which I think is really cute and cool, right? But then when I'm like, oh, how does this object live into the
Yeah.
future? What like can it and will it live? Will it pass the test of time? Um, I started to question that after a while with the word with
Mm.
those pieces, and so yeah.
I wonder actually if they should make work of that playfulness of a much larger scale. Because, for
hmm
example, like, I can't imagine a dining table with only those chairs. Like, where I'm sitting right now at my desk, maybe I could have one, but I'm not gonna have 8 of them. And, when we've talked before about, like, Casey McCafferty, who does, like, also those, what do you call it? Like, I don't there's right, that word where you use, like, human elements in something, right? He has, like, the hands and the feet, but it's like he's making big pieces, like case pieces that I think benches, right, that can be at that higher price point, but you would only have 1 bench, or you would only have, like,
hmm
1 case piece and not, like, an entire set of them, and so I kind of agree where, like, the chairs with those legs, like, maybe actually they would be better in, like, a different object type.
Yeah. What did you think?
I actually disagree. I thought that they were. I thought something that you guys have said in the past is,
Mm.
it's good design when you see it. And although you haven't seen it before, you think like, oh, that should have definitely been a thing. And that's what I felt
Mm.
when I saw those digitally. And then when I saw them in person, it's like, of course, a little chair with little shoes. Like, how has that not been done before? And
hmm
it's just perfect. And I don't think it had to be too loud. I think a lot of its charm isn't that it just has its little shoes on, not in a loud way. I definitely wouldn't have a dining table with 8 of them. I think that would cross the line of
Yeah.
silliness. But
It gets a little like
I
Mickey
do think
Mousey or something. Like,
I think it's the
yeah.
kind of object that you would have in your home, and it doesn't like it's not like a piece of art where I walk around the hallway and I'm like moved every time for years, but it's something that I'll hold a soft spot like, oh, that's my little chair with shoes. Like it's cute,
Mhm.
it's
And
charming, and I think that does stand the test of time.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's my yeah.
it probably lives in that same space as our Frama uh, crooked chair, which
Exactly.
I love it. I love that chair, but we have one. And it's a standout in our home because it's just like this. And I try to always like exhibit it or position it where people can like, oh wow, that thing is cool. And I think it
And
lives
they
in that
always say
space.
something about
I
it.
always say, right. And so I think what you're Alyssa's saying a little bit too is like it's almost like those chairs should be almost treated as collectible and not as like this is a product as much.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's kind of what you were feeling.
Yeah, I
or-
mean, I still think the work is great, but I do have similar thoughts about it in terms of its like livability, and
Mhm.
I think that in turn, like for them, it's just also like like a business decision. Like if you're trying to right, if you have one chair design that someone can fill an entire dining table of those chairs, that means you can make one sale of 8 chairs, whatever it might
Mhm.
be. But this chair, like you might only sell one, max two to someone. And so it's just like thinking
Definitely.
about
Right.
like what that means for you as a business and like whether that piece like exists as like a collectible piece and then you have other work that's like at a more is different in a way, can be applied differently in someone's home.
Yeah.
That I agree with. Do
I
you
th-
remember what the price was?
oh, I
I
didn't
think
ask
they're
him.
between 5 and 6.
The chairs?
Yeah, I think so.
Jeez, that's high. That's really high for a chair. That's really high. I also felt like the chandelier shoes, or the I wasn't a huge fan of that. I felt like it wasn't resolved yet. I think the most resolved thing was that table, and the table is chic. I love the way the moment where it kind of tapers towards the end, very subtle. The legs cast bronze. I mean, that's a lot of work, and I thought it turned out pretty exceptional. I just wonder how it lives. I think that they're treading towards collectible and they want to live in a product side of things. And so I think that that's something that they're going to have to think about as they move forward.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think we all though enjoyed the launchpad section of Wanted, which is the even more emerging side where basically it's like an even lower tier than those small booths. It's just like they have this open space with this big pedestal, like platform kind of
Hmm.
that has like, I don't know how many, like 100 pieces. And it might be just like one piece from a designer. And I think, what did those girls say? It's like $750
Yes.
to exhibit
It
at
was
Launchpad.
1200 per slot at
1200.
yeah, 1200 bucks, which is still,
Okay.
that's not that much. That's pretty
Yeah.
good. I'm going to be honest with you. This is something that from the art world, this would never be done. And I see this a lot in design. We saw it at a couple of shows that we could talk about, the Jonald Dudd at Blue Dot.
Mm.
Okay. And we saw it at the place in Greenpoint. I think design suffers from this particular style of exhibition.
Mm.
I don't think it's a good idea to be placing works on these larger pedestals mixed in with a bunch of other stuff. It doesn't let the work live. It doesn't let the work breathe, and you don't really get to experience the thing. But in terms of, I understand that for a trade show, it's fine. But consider if you're going to present in that manner, like what it means for your brand if you are doing that. I think it can be not great for your brand if you do that. So
You mean
just
because
something.
your work is standing next to other work that could be of a different caliber than yours?
Yes, and the curation
Mm.
is not tight. It's going to be hard to
Mhm.
have a tightly curated exhibition if you do that. I've never really understood that. And design world loves to do this. They love to like
Mm.
put everything in the middle and have you walk around and look at it. It's not great for I don't think it really lets the pieces
Mm.
shine, in my
I
opinion.
definitely agree that I think one of the beautiful things about design shows compared to art is how you can interact with the work and sit in it,
Mm-hmm.
touch it, and when everything is on a platform like that, you don't interact with the work at all. And I
Also,
think when you're making furniture, like, and you're trying to sell furniture, you should have whoever you're selling it to sit on it.
mm-hmm.
And on a
Agreed.
platform like that, you can't.
One of the people that I thought really stood out in terms of at Wanted was she put out, it's like Eny Studio.
Oh, Aeny.
Yeah, Aeny.
Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah.
Aeny. Yeah.
She did these sculptural lamps and this coffee table. Also, the booth suffered from having to cram it in. You didn't get to really fully experience the work in 3D. Again, she's a sculptural furniture maker. That's not the best platform for her, but I thought that there was something interesting with her work because she's studied neuroscience and then architecture, but then she's coming to making sculptural furniture, and her forms. Although I'm not a huge fan of these kind of alien-like forms, I did find that her way of sculpting, which is kind of like allowing form to emerge from her hands, like kind of allowing the fluidity of that to happen. I think that that's cool and interesting and unique to her and the way she sculpted things. But then furthermore, she patinaed the surfaces. I thought they were cast bronze. They were not cast bronze. They were patinaed surfaces to look like bronze. And not that I'm like, I like imitation, but I thought she did a really good job of creating a bronze-like thing on her own, and the alchemy that she had to do that. And she was telling me a little bit about that. So I think she's she's kind of someone to watch. I think she'll probably could get a gallery in town. I could see like a Todd Merrill liking her work.
Definitely Todd Merrill.
Todd Merrill
That's
style
right up
work.
his alley. It's like a new
Yeah.
Brecht vibe.
Oh, exactly. I
A
felt
little bit.
a little bit of a Brecht vibe on that. Yes.
And also, when you say that, I actually think about something that I do like about Wanted. I wish we had done more of the fair, actually, because we beeline to Wanted and it took up all of our time. But there were some people that we know through Instagram and the other sides of the fair, like Aronson Woodworks was there. We didn't get to see that.
Aronson Woodworks is good.
And a bunch of our clients, like the interior designers, were around the same time as us. We didn't get to say hi to them. But what I like about Wanted that we don't get at other fairs that maybe try to do more collectible, like Aspen, when we went to Aspen, is that you can really connect with the maker. Like when you were looking at that booth, you were like, okay, bronze work, feeling it out. But because she was there and you could talk to her and learn about her process, then you became a fan. Then you followed her on Instagram. Then you're like, oh, I'm going to watch out for her because she was able to get you into the process of her work. And they can all do that in that like intimate approach. And also her husband was there as like her number two. And so that kind of direct contact with the maker, I think, is nice. I
think it was very clear to me, and this is kind of an energy that I would say like I didn't experience at Collectible, and I don't think we experienced at Shelter immediately after. It was so clear how professional it was. Like, they have those badges. It says exactly who you are, whether you're trade, whether you're an exhibitor, and you could see like Hannah Beagle Eyes and Stephen Bukowski. They've done that. They've done ICFF for a few years together now. And you could just see the way that they're looking at the people walking around. Immediately someone comes up, they're like, sorry, I gotta go talk to that person. And the amount of like business that can happen and those connections. And I do think that I recognize like what a game changing moment that can be if you're there and you're on and you're connecting to the trade professionals that are walking around. And it just like it had a totally different vibe than I
Yeah. No,
have
that's true.
experienced before.
I would agree 100%.
I will say I did take the time to almost ask every single person at their booths, if I got a chance to talk to them, how sales are going or how they feel about sales. And most of them said that that's not really what's going on there. They're not selling. One guy in particular I had a pretty long conversation with. He was just like, I don't know, man. I just kind of keep doing it. I've done it 3 years, but I've never really seen a direct sale from here. And so I'm sometimes he's like, he had
Which
questions.
person was that?
He had a console, and
The very
a
first
mirror.
person you talked to?
One, yes, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to call him out, but I just think that there's a reality that like most people there are not. They're not really selling at the rate that I think one might think. Like, okay, the booth I also really love. Obviously, not obviously, but Ian Love has been now doing it for 7 years, I believe. This might have been his 7th year. Ian Love is a great designer, I think, and a sculptor. And his booth this year was beautiful. The colorful pieces that he made, I thought were really nice.
Did you ask him about sales?
Same thing, similar. And for him, now that it's 7 years in, he's kind of like, this is his time of year to show face, see clients again, and keep that thing going. But I've heard this over and over and over with these fairs is that is, and that's been our experience as well. That's not really the place to conduct actual business and not, or sell right off the floor by any stretch.
I feel like in my interpretation of it in the last 7 years, I can identify how I understood fairs with Fernando Mastrangelo Studio before COVID and after COVID. And I feel like from the fairs that you did before COVID, something about the New York City design scene at that particular time, I think bull market, a lot of exciting original work. The fairs were done really well. I think that was, maybe you wouldn't sell at the fair, but there was a lot of traction and value that you could get from that. And even before COVID in 2019, we did Downtown Design Dubai. That we got a lot of traction from, even though it was a foreign market to us. And
not at the fair, but
in
that Aurora mirror,
the subsequent years.
That Aurora mirror
so
just crushed. Yeah.
I understood fairs as something that in the next 6 months to a year is where you see the return. But I will say that I think that is a pre-COVID, or the market pre-COVID, possibly, because fairs have not, it seems, been able to capture that magic. Or maybe it's larger than that. Maybe the design work is not capturing the magic, or something is not fully resolved.
It would make
post-COVID.
sense, it would make sense, though, that COVID changed people's workflows, right? And that it used to be that you were, maybe as a trade professional going to these fairs, really going there to source new work, to do, discovery. But if fairs were not happening during COVID, then your method of doing those tasks changed.
That's a possibility.
Yeah, but okay. I think that's possible. I think the other point that you made about the energy around the industry has changed since COVID.
Yeah.
And I think we're still in a lag. Like the design scene, I'm not just talking about collectible. The design scene from, I would say, 2013 or 14 till COVID felt extremely robust. Okay, each year there was new innovators coming in, there was new studios popping up, and people doing really ambitious work. And the scene felt, strong, exciting. New things were happening, new shows were emerging. There was a lot of press around everything. And since COVID, I've just seen that energy it felt like it started to dwindle. And now the fact that I go to Wanton, I'm only really like 1 or 2 things are standing out. And then other fairs that we could talk about, like Shelter, I didn't, besides Jonald Dudd, there wasn't a lot that was engaging or exciting. I'm like, where are the makers? Where are you guys? And what's happening?
Mm.
And why is the scene not as exciting? That's been I've had trouble with that over the last few years.
Okay, so let's talk about Shelter.
Yeah, let's talk about Shelter.
So Shelter's a new fair this year, organized by some long-standing trade show folks. And the perspective that I heard about Shelter, like, largely came from the sort of independent studio, independent maker community. Probably about 6 months ago, I started to hear about them, that they were approaching a lot of New York City-based designers to exhibit with them this year. Fernando, I know you had like strong opinions on Shelter. What
You
did you think
know,
about it?
okay, first of all, there was a moment that I had FOMO because when I saw the list, I was like,
Mm.
Roland Hill, Jonald Dudd, Colony, Fort Standard,
Matter.
I was like, shit, these are real I mean, Roland Hill is huge, okay? And they
Mhm.
had a fantastic booth. Colony also had a great booth. But I would say that the message there was a bit mixed, ultimately, okay? You got a super high-end studio like Roland Hill, and then you had blankets and throws being sold on the opposite side. And then I love Fort Standard. They brought their poles, which I guess I would have never thought of them to bring like their door poles or that hardware style
Hardware. Yeah.
hardware. But it made but when you walk that side of the fair, it kind of made sense. There was that energy, and so I think it's hard to. And then you got Jonald Dudd, which is like the most experimental design, closer to art, closer to like I don't know what some of that stuff is. It's really wild, really out there. And so I'm walking through and I don't feel a continuity to the fair. I don't feel a voice from the fair. I feel like a bit of like, am I here to look at door pulls, that part of ICFF, or am I here to see experimental? And maybe that's what they're going for. But just personally, I could not participate in a fair like that because my work would just like, what am I doing there? You got, it just didn't make conceptual sense.
Yeah.
And
I feel like they just let everybody come.
And
It
then
was
you had
just
like
like
USM there, which is obviously like a
Yeah.
huge company.
huge company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, like, what it, I don't know. I felt okay. I read from I was reading on Design to Release that this fair, and I do like Julia's writing, and she said that this fair might save the New York design scene, and I was psyched. I was like, that's a bold statement, and unfortunately, I just don't think that it lived up to that, in my opinion.
Yeah. I had high expectations. I think what they did really well is they had really good press. It was the event that was going to be like the darling. It was set up to be the darling, and then, I think it then even more so underdelivered when we went.
I think the most impressive thing about the thing was the space. It was a good
Yeah.
space. That is the kind of that's the kind of fair. That's the kind of space, high ceilings. It felt grand when you walked in. I like that.
Yeah. It had good breathability.
Yes.
People had spacious booths. It was like pleasant to walk around.
Correct.
I felt. Yeah. There was good energy in there for sure.
My favorite part of the show was Jonald Dudd. I love what Chris is doing, and we're hopefully going to get him on the pod, and he could talk a little bit more deeply about that. I don't see the commercial side to what they're doing, but I don't know that that's relevant because I think the stuff that they're showing is trying to say, hey, like, design can be this wacky thing. Remember that the chair that had the blue inflatable thing going on? I'm like, okay, that's cool and experimental. But I also think like Chris is like an incredible curator in terms of the way he, the shag rug, he does, I got one of his t-shirts. Like, I think he brands things so well. but sometimes
He's that last little bit of, he's like the excitement that was pre-COVID, where things seemed like they could happen. They were fresh. There were young people with voices. You could like find gems and things. There was conceptual stuff happening. There was brand story happening. That he's still of that, but he's like a standalone. And now it's like such a stark contrast to see that like breath of fresh air be the only breath of fresh air going on right now.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I would agree with that.
And I also like what you said. You said when we went to go see his blue dot Nomad, this is not a strut. And all of the pieces were on a long table, which I know you don't love, but it helped you see it as like Chris's art installation that he
Yeah.
was using the other designers as materials
Yes,
to say or evoke
exactly.
this thing. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, I really love. There's like a Wes Anderson aspect to his curation, you know, and I thought he did a really beautiful job of in the blue dot space in that arched thing, and then he had the Marshall speakers and the hot dog things, and it feels so stark. And then I thought it was cool that they used the struts as pedestals to exhibit the show. So the whole thing is very conceptually engaging, and I thought the work at Strut was good. And I like this idea that, oh, okay, all of these are inspired by Strut, but they're not. They're just like these, some of them are just these wild, you know, like the piece I love was by Steve Bukowski, this kind of aluminum table. But it did feel like we were in Chris's world, versus it was the design.
But
was
the installation at Shelter was kind of similar, no? Because it was like this world that was created of all of these pieces together. Like, you know, that shag rug, those like little cats
yeah,
that
yeah,
were
the meowing
animatronic
cup, yeah.
cats.
You know, sometimes I wonder, right, when you go that playful, like what is the target market for that work?
Yeah.
You
I
ever
think
wonder?
it was hard for me to look at any of that and actually like be able to see any of those pieces outside of that context, like as an individual, like to purchase one piece from that whole selection felt like, oh, you had to do a lot of creative thinking to pull it out of that context.
Right.
Yes.
I would agree. But I don't want him to feel discouraged, and I don't think that he will or does.
No.
I think those presentations are interesting and important to have in the design world right now, or else, like Mika was saying, there's not a lot of that energy going on.
It's a draw.
It's a draw. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also somebody out here who maybe what it lost is maybe there's some coolness lost. You know, he's one of the guys saying, this is what's cool. These guys in my show are cool. And that, I don't know who else is doing
Someone's
that.
got to stand up for that stuff. Yeah. And I mean, you know, he had Chen and Kai curate, and Chen and Kai are cool.
And they're cool.
And they're cool, and they make cool work. And so I thought that was nice to bring them in, because they have a funky aesthetic, you know, in general. So I knew that they would bring some flair. But yeah, I had high hopes for Shelter. I think they have a good brand. I think Shelter as a brand is nice, because it's like, you know, like home, but another way. It has an interesting thing. I think they need to rethink their curatorial delivery on the fair itself, and maybe or have a guest curator. I'd be happy to curate next year if they wanted.
Drop all your shit talking.
Well, I think
They're gonna
because
hear
we need a platform. Okay.
Well, maybe they didn't really like, maybe it's their year one. Maybe they also like wanted to test and see like what was actually successful. You know, who.
So they're like, let's just do it all.
You don't want to
And
put
see
you don't
what
want to
people
put throw
pick.
blankets. You don't want to put throw blankets.
I do
saw
agree. Like I was
keychains.
I was a little.
That was bad.
Yeah.
That was the line.
There was clocks.
I was a little surprised walking around, because it's
Yeah.
like I only heard about this fair from like a very specific community.
Yeah.
So
I I do want to give a
Yeah.
shout out to another cool thing,
Mm.
which was, I forget what it's called, but it was
Radio
in
Star?
Greenpoint.
Radio Star.
Was that what the show was called? Oh,
Uh,
Forced Perspective. It was
Forced
called Forced
Perspective
Perspective
at Radio Star
It's
in
in
Greenpoint.
Greenpoint.
I want to give a
think
shout out
curated
to.
by Kiwi. That was
No.
my favorite.
Kiki Goatee.
Kiki.
Kiki Goatee.
Kiki.
Oh, also a cool name, Kiki.
It was, I think it was
Kiki.
Kiki. No,
It's because I know
it was
Kiwi.
Kiki Gotti and Kim Mupanjula.
Cool.
So well curated. Honestly, it was a really, first of all, you have to go to Greenpoint. It almost didn't make it onto our list, but I really wanted to go see it. And you have to go around a restaurant through a back door and kind of discover it, which is pretty cool. And then it was very well curated with some pieces that reminded me again of unique voices that could be in collectible, that have their own thing going on, which we said already we haven't seen a lot of it in the last 5 years, but we saw a little bit of it there. So that was exciting, and that was a standout for me.
I would say it's a standout too. I love the space. I love what they're doing. I had a great conversation with Kiki, and I think she's very smart. And the standout for me was the Luke Malaney chair, and then the lamp by the. She's an Asian artist, and I'm sorry that I forget him, but we'll put it on. Hopefully, we can bring it onto the screen because we did take photos. It was on the back. It was on the last little section. A lamp made of wood, kind of a totem, and then at the top were these kind of paper infused resin chandelier. I thought the mark making on the wood was unique. I think she had something she's doing. She has a voice that's coming out that even though I'm not always a big fan of like wood, because I think like people should use new materials, I think she has something going. And same thing with Luke. Like Luke is using wood, but it's this kind of like high-low that's going on with their work. Luke's work looks like it's kind of like, roughly done, but the roughness is elevated and becomes sophisticated and becomes an interesting language that is unique to him. And I think she's doing
It's
similar.
authentically
Yes, it's authentic,
collectible.
and it's definitely in the collectible realm.
And
he was
her piece
presenting
made
was it a
wood.
rocking chair? He had
It was not a rocking chair; it was
or
just a
not
standard
a rocking
four-legged
chair?
chair. Yeah.
It made wood seem new and fresh again,
Mm.
I think.
Yeah, and it felt conceptual, and that is essential for a collectible design, that it has narrative and narrative-driven objects. I think are
Yeah,
important.
his work definitely has that.
Yeah, and I've heard rumors about him that just like good rumors, like yeah, that's an up and comer, and I believe Chris Shao showed him at Design Miami.
He shows
makes
his work
sense.
quite a bit. Yeah,
He shows his work, yeah, and
It's
Chris
Very
has.
objective.
It is very objective, and Chris has amazing taste, and so the fact that Chris is already on that makes me like, yeah. And I had seen his work in images, but not in person. So, yeah, shout out to Luke if you're listening. Good job.
I have a question,
Yeah.
which I do not have the answer for,
Okay.
but I'm going to pose. Because we've said a lot of things about how ICFF or shelter might not be the right spot, or that there's not somewhere for these collectible people to go. And then we did go to an offshoot of Ariel from Slash Objects, where she got her own space, did a pop-up, had a few objects there, and then invited people there and was up for Design Week. Do you think that that is an answer or response to this void? Yes, no, maybe. Further developing?
I
I
think
mean, Emily
go
Thurman
ahead.
did kind of the same. Emily Thurman, who was in between us at Collectible, she rented her own space and did her own show. I don't know if it's necessarily a response. I feel like people have always done a little bit of that, right? I feel like there's always a handful of people that kind of invest a little bit more to like carve their own, experience or whatever it might be. But it's really hard to get people to your own
Exactly. I would say
exhibition.
you're better off in numbers. You got power numbers. I think Ariel can get away with it because she's been in the game a decade now, or almost a decade. And she's, she has a good studio. People know her work. She has a collector base. Interior designers know her. So I think she can get away with it a little bit more. But overall, I think it makes the industry suffer a bit to not have a place for all of these people to go. And that's probably why you're seeing, this kind of dislocation of these artists or these designers, and the scene not feeling as vibrant because the platforms are not there. And if we get down to the brass tacks of it, it's like we have to also recognize that since COVID, the city has become it does not nurture young designers or artists anymore. It is a place that is extraordinarily expensive to the degree that it's hard to run a studio. It's hard to be in that creative vibe. And
It's hard to make collectible work.
And right, how to make it, sell it. So the essentially that's why these people all go to galleries, and that's why the industry is where it is. New York is becoming impossible to survive in as a creative, and that's just a reality that I think we're starting to see play out through ICFF and we're seeing the physical ramifications of that. And I don't think we talk about it a lot, but I think that that's really what's going on, is that the creative crowd is having to, where they're not, I've talked about this so much. I wrote a Substack about this, where are they? Where are they going? They can't survive in New York. And we're starting to see the creativity kind of dwindle a bit. And one thing that Jeff Lincoln said during the Fifth Wall presentation for Edward Fields was that a lot of things feel derivative. And I'd 100% back that up. I'm tired of how derivative design has become. Something needs to happen. The next wave of people need to come in and start smashing things and making new things and getting experimental again and start bringing and reviving this industry to what it was pre-COVID. And I think that includes people writing about things. Like the press needs to start talking about what's going on. They need to not just write things that are based on their sponsors or people that are in the magazine. And people need to start talking about the industry and the world of design again. The art world does a very good job of this. The art world analyzes itself in every aspect. Design world, we were on that path for a very long time, and then it's just kind of evaporated. And it's evaporated because magazines have gone away. Things have, naturally we're going through an evolution as a culture. And so that evolution is, we need to figure it out, we need to figure it out and get back on this track where creativity can thrive again in the city.
Well, you guys are doing it.
Us
Design
too.
Discord
Yeah,
is analyzing the industry.
Yeah,
Trying.
well, that's right. And that's why we're doing this pod, is to kind of figure those things out and talk out loud about it. And hopefully it'll create a conversation with the community about it. Because I know everyone lives in their own sort of bubble, but I have a feeling that people in our bubble are feeling this same way.
Yeah,
And I think
100%. I mean, you can also just feel that it was kind of an accident that we launched this podcast the week right before Design Week.
Yeah.
And I remember the first night I went to a show and people were like, "Oh my God, I can't wait for your podcast. We need this." And I think that I was kind of caught off guard because I was not prepared for anyone to know that this existed yet.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh." But I think it's true. And to be honest, if we're being really honest, there's very few press that people actually sit down and read, first word to last word. And I think that's because everyone sort of knows that they're not going to learn anything new
Yeah.
through reading it. Um, and yeah, I'm excited that we're doing this and like breaking down those
I,
walls
I
and having these conversations.
I think this is where the conversations have migrated to is podcasting. Okay. The
Mm,
real intellectual conversations going on in politics, in Hollywood and whatever, every little pocket is migrating to this. And that's why we decided also to do this. But it's because, yeah, intellectual discourse is not really happening in the magazines or, you know,
yeah.
um, and so it's got to migrate somewhere. And, I also don't want to like turn into like, oh, everything is shit. Okay. Because I, I look deeply into this community. Okay. And I am really trying to find gems. And I see there's an earnestness in a lot of these makers that they
Yeah.
want to make it and they want their platform to do it in. And they're willing to put themselves out there financially, with their work. And I look out at them and I feel bad that they don't have a place to do that properly,
Mhm.
And I can't go around and try to solve it all. Like I can't start a fair, I can't do these things, but there are other people positioned to do that. And there has to be a desire to do it. And but there is this earnestness that I look at and I'm just like, damn, don't stop. I know it can be a little bit like feel isolated maybe, but don't stop because that creativity is what drives things forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's like, you know, I mean, that's the reason why I'm starting the business that I am
Yes.
and that I also you feel why I also think it's the right time for it from at
Mm-hmm.
least the maker's perspective, because you feel this energy of people that want to make it, that want to succeed, that want to try new things in order to get there. And from my perspective, or like, my hypothesis is that technology can play a role in helping a certain greater number of people get to where they want to be going. But it's, the system maybe is kind of shit, but the people are actually like, I walk around and in those 5 days, I don't know how many makers I met, 100 maybe people that I know. And each one of them is so kind and
Mm-hmm.
genuine and creative and is willing to risk so much in order to be able to do that
Mm-hmm.
for the rest of their life.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We don't want this industry to become about only, the privileged and the elite can make it in this. Okay. And we're starting to see that happen a bit. And, with the PR game, we still need to have an episode about PR. But, it's like the whole thing has become such a pay to play that the industry itself, the world has become a pay to play. The world. Like you want to play in any field, you got to pay to play. And that is where creativity goes to die. And we
Mm.
don't want that. We don't want that,
Yeah.
you know, my career is kind of an example of how that has happened. Like, in a sense that it's dying, but what happens is like things have aggregated up to us because I'm an established designer, right? So it's like I've played the game for so long that, it trickles upward is what I'm saying. But it's hard for people to get to that place these days, So, and unless you have the right gallery or the right amount of money or the this or the that or the that or la 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 la, it's very hard to do. And so, yeah. Anyway,
Mm.
Wait, I
so
have one more last bonus
please.
tip. If you're doing the fairs, which I just learned from Fernando himself, because we put together a fast clip reel like everybody else did of Design Week or ICFF or whatever, and I showed it to him and he was like, F this, like, this is what everybody else's reel look like. We need to like just do stories of what I think. And I was like, okay. And we did it and got a great response. And so when you guys are doing these shows, don't just do
Mm.
the quick reels that everybody else is doing where it's like pretty done. Instead, be like, this is what I liked, or here's my work coming out, or this went wrong, or, your real experience of it, even if it's only going to a short amount of people on stories, or you do it as a carousel. We just learned that this weekend, so I would share that tip.
Yeah, or like, I mean, I told Fern this, and I think people when they're actually at the fair are a little too stressed, but I would love to do a recap, like circle back with, 10 to 20 people that exhibited and be like, okay, so how much did you spend on this? And what is your, like, if it's not, if you don't see like an immediate financial return in terms of sales, like what is the return that you think you did get from these 3 days in the qualitative kind of way?
Yeah, I wish there was some data on that. I would love that data. I
Yeah.
love data.
We'll
I
do it.
love
I'll
data.
pull it. I'm gonna pull it out.
But I think it's important for
Over
people
the-
to
yeah.
recognize that. And also for people considering applying and kind of understanding the costs and what the returns are like. Just, if you're leaving school sometime soon or you're considering doing this stuff, like just know, that, there are breakout stars, I'm sure, each year. That just do really well with sales, but it's not everybody, and it's kind of tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to give one shout out. I did this in beautiful studio visit with Theo Pinto. He's not a designer, but he's an artist. We had a beautiful studio visit. I appreciate his work. Funny enough, I'm longtime follower, first time in-person viewer at his studio, and they're quite mesmerizing paintings. And the guy's got a great spirit and doing really, and he's pretty popular in the interior design world. A lot of the interiors I see have Theo's work in it now, and so he's kind of part of the industry in some ways. So, but yeah, really good paintings. So check him out. And
Cool.
who
Our
else?
20-minute bonus episode. Do
Yeah.
do an hour?
Nick, we couldn't do it in 20. I was realizing you can't do this in 20
Oh,
minutes.
man.
But yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys in terms of what you guys thought. Send us comments, send us questions, because yeah, we'd be curious what you guys thought, who your standouts were. So anyway, thanks for joining us. Mika, thanks for giving us your input. And you'll be
You're
hearing
welcome.
a lot more from her on an episode that we focus strictly on sales, because she's the sales dynamo behind my studio. And so she's going to give a lot of good insight. So look forward to that episode. And yeah, like and subscribe. Come on, people. Get us up the chart.
Leave
I
a
don't even know if there's
comment.
a chart. Leave a
Leave a
comment.
review.
I don't think we've had a comment yet. I've had a lot of, by the way, anyone who approaches us.
I'll go put a
and-
comment.
You're going to put a comment. Thanks. For you guys that came up to us and showed some appreciation for the pod. Thank you so much. Irvi, I took your note a little bit. You'll know what I'm talking about.
We've gotten some DMs on the Instagram.
Oh, we
I've shared
did?
some screenshots. Yeah, I shared some screenshots.
Oh,
with you.
yes. No, thanks. Yes,
Yeah.
that was awesome.
There have been a few more, but they were a little bit more casual. Just like a great.
That's
episode.
right. Nate,
Yeah.
thanks for your comment. Love your work. We still love it every day in our home. And so, yeah, guys, keep sending us the comments, because it really fuels us in a way, because we feel like we're
Yeah.
connecting with you guys.
Or share with a friend. Share with
Yeah.
a designer friend. Share with your studio mate. Get the
Oh,
word
yeah.
around so that
got
we
an-
can keep doing this.
That's right. We got this awesome opportunity. We're going to be doing this for ICIC for the School of Art and
SAIC.
SASCIC, right? SAIC? SA. School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Sorry. Okay. Alyssa and I have been invited to do a online Zoom critique talk, meet the students.
Q&A.
Q&A,
yeah.
but we're going to turn it into a podcast, so you guys will get to see that, and that should be a lot of
Yeah.
fun. So little opportunities are already opening up from doing this, so we're really excited. And
And if you want Design Discord to come to your school,
yeah,
DM
let us know.
Your school, your
business.
business,
Wow.
Hey,
your
give talks now. They're on a
maker
talk circuit.
space,
I will throw this out there. I think we have already.
your
but
fair.
If
Design
somebody,
Discord can come to your fair.
Design Discord can come to your fair so we can creditize you. No, I'm just kidding. No, if you pay us, we'll say good shit all the whole time. We'll be like, oh, that fair was amazing. I'm just kidding. I will do that. No, I wanted to say I would love to have an online studio visit where you and I meet with a designer via Zoom. They walk us through the studio, talk to us about their work, and we give real feedback. I'd love to introduce that. So if anyone's listening, 1 hour in, I'm opening up the doors for you guys. We will do a studio visit.
Feedback
and give
not only about the work, but also about questions about the business, about
all
social
that.
media, about all that kind of stuff.
All that.
I think
And I want to throw that out there because I
that'd
think it'd be fun.
be interesting.
So,
Yeah.
all right, guys.
Cool.
Thanks for joining
Until
the
next time.
number one podcast in the design world, Design Discord. I'm Fernando Mastrangelo. You can find me at IMFM on Instagram and anywhere else. And my co-host.
I'm Alyssa Gerasimov, the founder of Area, and you can find Area on Instagram at ERRIA_XYZ.
Love you guys. Keep designing. Thanks, Mika. Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.